Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Get Healthy Tampa Bay podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kerry Reller, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Amanda Adkins. Dr. Adkins, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so I am Dr. Amanda Adkins. I am board certified in both internal medicine and lifestyle medicine. And I am the CEO and owner of Enlightenment Health and Wealth, where I help women of faith who are overweight prevent and reverse chronic illnesses so they can live out their God-given purpose.
Yeah, everybody I think everybody is much needed in this aspect. So I'm super happy to have you on today to talk about everything that you have done in your past and what you're doing now and what's going forward. So why don't you tell me a little bit about lifestyle medicine and how you got into that?
Yes. So I tell people this is a long story because my health and wellness journey started for myself back when I was a teenager. So I started all the way back to my freshman year in high school. And for those that grew up in the 90s, if you remember having to do your presidential physical fitness test in a PE class, one aspect of that was you had to get your weight. And I remember stepping on the scale and weighing 199 pounds as a 13-year-old. And I was absolutely devastated. And I was like, oh my gosh, you look in the mirror, you're overweight, but you don't know until you actually step on the scale to see the numbers. And I tell people that it was a very pivotal point for me, because if it was like 203, it probably been like, oh, okay, oh well. If it was like 185, it probably wouldn't have been too bad. Because it was right on that cusp of when you go from the ones to the twos, I was like, I vowed never to let two be the first number of my weight. And it's not all about the scale, but that was just how I tell people that's how it just kind of changed for me. It stuck in my brain like, okay, Amanda, you have to do something different. I had a full family history of people being overweight, obese, having heart disease, diabetes, being on dialysis, different type of cancers. And as I was growing up, I was just seeing all this in my family, like family member after family member passing away from all these different illnesses. And I was like, I don't want that to be me, because, genetics has a strong role in the way that our body actually transitions and everything. So I was like, I know if I continue to do what they are doing, I'm going to follow the same path. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Well, I had already decided I wanted to become a physician when I was in elementary school. So it was like the two kind of played together. Like, okay, so you want to learn this thing. You can't be a doctor that's overweight telling people that they have to lose weight and be healthy. So I wanted to be more of an example for my patients in the future. So I was like, what can I do now? As I started out with my journey, I started just first with exercising. And I was like, okay, so I know if I do this, because I was the person that just usually just stayed sitting down. I was a reader. I love to read, watch TV, not really an outdoors person at the time. So I was like, well, no wonder you're overweight. You're not doing anything. So I started just to move around. And then at the age of 16, I became a vegetarian. And people ask me, like, why did you become a vegetarian at 16? In the 90s, that wasn't really popular. I grew up in Indiana. That's not something that they were doing. That's not something that was readily available. Plus, my father was a meat delivery truck driver. So we got bacon, sausage, bologna, ham, all that stuff basically for free, because if it was about to expire, they gave it to their employees. So it's like, okay, so your dad gets this food for free and you're not eating it. So, growing up in the 90s, your parents are like, I don't know what you think, but we're not about to change what we're doing because you decided you don't want to eat meat anymore. So what I would do first is just kind of pick out the meat from the food and just start it from there. The last piece of meat that I ate, I remember, was chicken, because it was at a cheerleading banquet at the end of the year. So people always ask me that. I just remember that because it kind of correlated to the end of the school year there. And then I went on through college, medical school, and residency, being what I called a junk food vegetarian. And I would take off meat from places or go to a Burger King or a McDonald's and get a Big Mac with no meat, something like that. And then we don't learn a lot about nutrition in med school and residency. They just say, tell people to eat right and exercise, and then prescribe them this medication. Especially big in internal medicine, like you get a lot of patients that have chronic illnesses. So we're more trained to manage their illnesses than to actually treat their illnesses. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're designed to do. Just here's a prescription, good luck, and I'll see you in 3 to 6 months type of thing. So I actually had a patient when I first started out in practice that said he was following a doctor named Dr. Joel Furman, and he was really into changing his eating habits and lifestyle. And he told me about a book called Eat to Live. So I was like, oh, okay, let me check this out. In the meantime, I had lost weight, keeping it off with exercising, not eating meat, but still was more to learn. And so when he told me about that book, I was like, okay, I skimmed through it and learned a few things at the time. But then because we have to do continual medical education courses, I decided to take a nutrition course that was being offered in Arizona. And it had to be in Arizona because that's always where I wanted to go. I'd never been there, didn't travel much growing up. So I tell people it's all like a perfect storm. Like all these things have to work together for me to get all this together to go. And I was at that conference, and it was only in the morning times. In the afternoons, you got to lay by the pool and all that kind of stuff. And one of the speakers there was a physician, and he said, you cannot out exercise a bad diet. And that spoke to me like more than anything else at the conference. I can't tell you anything else from the conference besides him saying that. And I was like, oh man, I wonder what he means by that. Because before I was always like, calories in, calories out. It doesn't matter what it was. I can just eat and then go and exercise, burn a few calories, and I'll be fine. So from then, I wanted to really learn more about nutrition and figure out what was a healthy diet, at least for me. And then some of the patients asking me, what else can they do besides medication? So then I decided to look into this. So I was Googling things like, okay, what is this that you can do with eating healthy, exercise? I came across so many different things like homeopathic medicine. I even took a course in that. And I'm like, oh, no, this is not quite what I want. This is a whole different area. Then I looked at functional medicine. I'm like, oh, okay, this may be it. But it went deeper than what I wanted in some aspects of people's life and things like that. And I was like, I would never be able to implement this into my internal medicine practice. I would have to totally switch to functional medicine. So I'm like, that's not quite what I'm looking for. And then it just so happened that on my Google search came up lifestyle medicine. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I actually saw that there was a board certification, and they talked about the 6 pillars of lifestyle. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for my entire life. And so it just happened that I came upon lifestyle medicine. It was a newer specialty that's out there. I think the first board certification was in 2014, and I actually started practicing in 2009. So it wasn't available at that time. I had been doing different things for years, and I just happened to come upon it. And so I went to a plant-based conference, and then to the lifestyle medicine conference, and then became board certified in lifestyle medicine. So that's the long story of how I went from being my overweight self to now becoming a lifestyle medicine physician that helps other women do the same journey just in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah. What an awesome story. I have many comments and questions. I feel like I also kind of had a similar-ish story, though I am not vegetarian, but I remember presidential fitness. I remember we had to do the arm hang, and the boys had to do the pull-ups and everything like that. I don't remember getting weighed. I don't remember that part of it at all, but I remember all the exercises that we had to do. But I loved PE, so I was probably very into that. But you said you became vegetarian at 16. And I feel like some of that stemmed from the chronic illnesses that you were seeing in your family. But did you put that together, or how come you decided to be vegetarian?
Yes. And I tell people, like, I don't know what was going on in my mind at the time. I was like, oh, let me try this. I was more focused at that time for weight loss. So I'm like, can this help me lose more weight? And it just so happened that, like I said, everything kind of worked together to say, okay, yes, you're going to become vegetarian at this age, because at this point in time in your life, you're going to need to talk about more plant-based eating. And again, I just think that that's just the way my spiritual life works. And it's just all comes together. Like, I would have never thought that I would be out speaking about what I did when I was 16 years old, because if you knew me at age 16 or before, I was like, I'm not a speaker. I don't usually go out and talk. I like I said, read, sit in the background somewhere. And again, I think that's just part of my overall story, that I was to have to go through these things to be able to now come out and speak to women, especially women of color, to let them know that it is possible. And even though you came from a certain background with eating certain foods, you don't have to stay that way. You can actually change and do something different.
Yeah, I really, really like the part in your life story of how you knew that there were some medical problems in your family and that you
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to be that way, right? And
Yes.
I feel like I see lots of patients and even family and friends where they just see their parent or loved one and they are just thinking, oh, well, that's going to be me next.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hurts in here. And I feel like I'm going to break out in tears about this, but I feel like they don't understand they are not doomed to these same things. And I
Yes.
mean, they're also not going to get the good things if they don't do things right, right? So it could
Right.
be work in either direction. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's amazing, especially with your dad being a meat delivery driver, just to
Correct.
say, no, I'm going to be vegetarian. And I mean, that's the last time that you ate meat when you were
Yes.
16, like chicken. You remember that. That's
Yes.
crazy. Yeah.
I
I
know,
mean,
right?
what a turning point. And then I also really liked when you were saying how you were a junk food vegetarian, right? Because or vegan, right? There's way more of those foods now, I think, than there
Mm-hmm.
probably
Right.
were before. But French fries are vegetarian. These Beyond Beef and Beyond Meat things or
Yeah.
whatever are vegan and vegetarian, and they are just not that healthy compared to eating like real foods. They're still
Right.
processed
Beans.
foods
Mm-hmm.
and all sorts of, I don't know, preservatives, and the sodium content that I have
Yeah,
seen
that's
in
it.
some
The
of those is
sodium.
just
Mm-hmm.
astounding. So
Yes.
it's important that you kind of went through this phase of a quote junk
Right.
food vegetarian, and now after kind of learning more and getting into lifestyle medicine, that
Right.
it's not just one thing. You need to eat healthy, and French fries are vegan, but they're not all the time healthy, right?
Right.
So I
Yes.
really liked that. Yeah.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. It was where I went from vegetarian junk food to then eating like vegan plant based. So that was, I didn't mention all that part of the story, but that was after I moved to California and actually was in a group called Black Girls Run, and they brought in a dietitian, a nutritionist that actually took us through a vegan week. And I was like, okay. And I kind of listened to my body because they're like really hone in on what you were eating and how it affected your body. And so that's what tipped me over from vegetarian to vegan, because I was still eating eggs and dairy, cheese. And I was like, I don't think I can give these up. What am I going to eat in the morning if I don't have eggs or cheese? And I love cheese, love cheese. And I was like, oh man, my body just didn't feel right trying to eat those foods. And so I tell people, your body will tell you if you go away from a food and then try to come back and eat it and like you don't feel right, then that's your body telling you this is not good for me. It rarely does that with like an apple or broccoli, but I tell people like that. But that's kind of what pushed me over. And then with the processed vegan foods, I tell people you have to be very careful. And I tell you can use that as a transition point, or if you have those occasionally, but that's not where you get the health benefits. The health benefits are in, like you said, the whole foods, eating the beans, the legumes, the whole vegetables, the fruit, all that there. But if you were an avid meat eater, it's kind of hard to go from that to eating beans or tofu.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're so popular, because the marketing industry knew what they were doing when they're like, okay, we can have this taste like meat, still be processed and very addictive for people, and we'll get them to buy it because they'll think it's the healthier version. But when they first started doing meat substitutes, they were actually made of vegetables, and those were my favorite. Like they were actually veggie burgers. I remember Burger King actually had a burger, and you can see the carrots and the peas and all that kind of stuff in the actual burger. But I think that was still for the manufacturers and marketing. It was a hard sell for people that ate meat still, because it didn't taste like meat. And so they couldn't necessarily transition. So I wish they still had those instead of the Beyond and the
Mm-hmm.
Impossible, because that's really geared more towards meat eaters than us that's been vegetarian for a long time.
Yeah, I used to eat the Morning Star
Yeah.
Farms veggie burgers. I don't remember the
Yeah.
nutritional content of them, but I liked them. Do you know, were they more vegetable based or?
It was more vegetable based. It still
Yeah,
had some processed things in there. They
yeah.
still were put together with egg, because again, I was vegetarian at the time, but it was a bit healthier than the Beyond. It still had some sodium in there, but it wasn't as
It,
much.
it didn't have the saturated fat or anything like
No,
that, I don't think.
no.
Yeah. But I remember I
Well,
used to
no, it
eat
probably
those
had
a
a
lot.
little bit because it had
Yeah.
egg in there, but it wasn't much. Like it was truly like our black bean burgers. They also had
Mm-hmm.
those.
Yeah.
So it was a bit healthier, but like I said, I don't think it transitioned into the market, the meat eaters as much.
Right.
So it
Right.
wasn't as popular.
Yeah, it didn't really taste like a burger. So
It
how
didn't.
did you feel? Like, what did you feel when you removed the eggs and the dairy? And then did you ever try going back to it? Or what did you notice differently?
I noticed that I did not have like a queasy stomach after eating eggs. So this is another part of the story. So I was an avid Coca-Cola drinker. I got rid of the soda during that time too with the nutritionist. So I realized that after I ate eggs, I would always have to go and get a Coke because I was like, you think Coke, Coke is not good for the stomach, but it would settle my stomach. I didn't do 7-Up and things like that. But after I ate eggs, it just didn't settle well with me. And so I was trying to cover it up by drinking something or eating something different on top of that. And so when I really dig deep to try to like say, okay, why am I eating these certain foods? What do I feel like afterwards? And it wasn't until I did that actual exercise, I'm like, oh, I don't feel good after eating eggs. So why would I continue to eat eggs if I don't feel well? And this is before I knew about the cholesterol and things like that that were in there, really dig deeper as far as the benefits from the health component of it. And then cheese, it was kind of like when I did with meat. I was like, okay, let's see how long I can go without it. Because again, they didn't have a lot of vegan-based cheeses at the time that were tasty. It was very clumpy and hard and things like that. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to see how long I can go without it. And I haven't went back. So I'm kind of that person, like, every day. I don't want to downplay people that have like other addictions like alcohol, but it's just kind of like one day at a time. That's why I tell people when I talk about soda drinking or meat eating or eating cheese, things like that, or even sweets. I take it one day at a time and I just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do today. And, one more day, I just keep going. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It is kind of one day at a time, forget yesterday. And sometimes I have them tell themselves like maybe tomorrow, but not today. I think that's also what they use sometimes for some addiction and counseling, right? So you always have the idea that it could be there, but it doesn't have to be today, right? So you can fend off. But some people, it may not even be by day, it might be by hour or something, especially, if there's certain cravings that happen throughout the day or anything like that. But I think I started using like a habit tracker personally and showing my patients of like, here, I can make sure I follow this habit today and check it off. And then the next day, see how it works throughout the week or month and things like that. And I think that helps break habits and create new good habits too. So we started using that. And I wanted to go back how you were Googling things because it was so funny because that is how I found obesity medicine as well a couple years ago. I really don't know, but I just came across it the same way, like Googling it. And I'm like, why didn't I know about this several years ago? Like, this is kind of what I'm supposed to do. Eventually, we all come around to where we need to be, but somehow it took a little bit longer. And I know lifestyle medicine is a little bit newer than obesity medicine, but they cross over in a lot of paths.
Yes.
And I think both of them, you brought up a point earlier of how in our medical education, there's not much nutrition education. And I think at least there are these things that exist now that people can get this extra training because I feel like gypped. I feel like we learn how to manage these diseases and here's your medicine. But where was the, training and how to prevent it or at least stop it from progressing, right? Like, yeah, you got a medicine, but what about the beginning? And I think these new pathways with lifestyle medicine, obesity medicine, everything is really, and in just general nutrition and everything, culinary medicine is helping everybody at least realize that there's other things out there. And I think more and more primary care doctors and other doctors are getting on board with it. So I think that's really good. Did you have a culinary background too? Did you do extra training in culinary medicine? I thought I saw some.
I do not know. I didn't even learn about that until after I was looking into lifestyle medicine.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I'm not a cook either. So that's another thing. People are like, oh, how do you stay eating healthy if you don't like to cook? I was like, that's another story too. But no, I'm not a chef. I will definitely point people to recipes that they can try, but I'm not in there putting together my own stuff.
Yeah, I don't usually create much too either. It's easy to follow recipes, so that works. But I don't mind cooking as long as I have the time for it. And that's the hard part. But meal prepping and planning, I think, helps a lot.
That is
so
big.
I was going to ask you, so you mentioned spirituality and health. Can you tell me a little bit how you bring that into your programs or your life or anything? Just how do you bring it all together?
Yes. So definitely, like I said, things just work out, I think, for what we're actually meant to do. So I grew up in the church and learning different things, how our body is a temple, and just seeing actually in the church how people were not taking that verse, I don't think literally, because just like in my family, because I grew up in basically my family was the church and the church was in the family. And so you just kind of see the people, just their health wasting away. And I remember young, my pastor actually died in his 40s. And at the time, I didn't know he was in his 40s because I was still in high school, wow. Complications from diabetes. And it wasn't until I think like a few years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm my pastor's age when he passed away from complications from diabetes. And that just kind of weighed on my heart. Like, okay, how can I now use what I know about health and wellness to now reach back into the church and the people that actually hold spirituality very close to them and use the scriptures to bring it all together. And so that's what kind of got me through, especially through just life's training with a medical school residency, being the first person in my family to be a professional, be a physician, that it was just like Bible verses that I would have all over the house just to continue to remind me. And so I use that in the coaching to actually draw deeper, because there's a lot of things that, facts that we know, and people just kind of gloss over those. But when we actually dig deeper into our spiritual person and what we're actually meant to do and what we're supposed to be doing here, and that if our physical body is not aligning with that, then we're going to have a conflict. We're never going to actually reach our full potential of what we're supposed to do. And I just don't want people to do that. So I really bring in the scriptures to kind of help people and ground them, to actually show them that this is not two separate things. This is one thing. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. So we need to take care of not only your spirituality, but also your human body, so that you can actually carry out your God-given purpose.
That's so important. And I think that's a beautiful way to do it. Are these like you said Bible scriptures or verses? Do you have any examples?
Yes. So like your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. You have that. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. There's a verse in Genesis that talk about how Adam and Eve are in the garden and God made all the fruit bearing trees for us to eat. I tell people, it doesn't mention anything about meat. So why are we eating it? That's a different thing. Then I talk about Daniel's story of how him and his friends, that when they actually were getting ready to be a part of the king's army, that they were the ones that only ate, the fruits and vegetables and legumes, and they were the strongest, the wiser men in actually the army. It actually took them longer and farther in their actual earthly journey than it would for the other people that were in the actual training with them. And so it's just all those different verses like that I just try to get people to hone in on, and to actually look, and they're like, oh, because a lot of churches now do like the Daniel fast for the 21 days, and then they go back to what they were doing. I'm like, no, we don't go back, we continue. So I just kind of use all those things to remind people, like, there's nothing in the Bible that said Daniel went back to eating meat after he left there. So if it was good enough for those 21 days, it's good enough for eternity.
Yeah.
So yes.
Well, you mentioned fasting. I think that's important because that's something that's very prevalent in religion and in our ancestors, like growing up and whatever, developing, where they used to have the feast or the famine. They used to fast, and the body allowed those periods of fasting and then feasting. And that's something that, because we don't do that as much here, because food is just everywhere, right? The sweets are everywhere. Like you mentioned, like the fruit on the tree, right? Well, that existed. It wasn't everywhere before. You had to go forage and find it. Right. Now that it's everywhere, that's another reason why it can contribute to weight. But like, that's the other thing, is fasting for prayer or for whatever reason, I think is sometimes, I guess, overlooked. Like people just fast to lose weight or whatever. But I think it's really interesting that you bring up all the religious references, and I hadn't thought about it in that manner. So I think that's really nice. And that you use it with is it coaching clients or patients or both, I guess?
I use it for both. And for patients, if they mention their spirituality, then I bring that in. Like I had a patient that actually had on a bracelet that said, what would Jesus do? And we're talking about his diabetes and how he was just eating whatever. And I'm like, okay, so let's see, like, what's that on your arm? Trying to bring that in. And it just kind of caught him different. He was like, oh, okay. I kind of see what you're saying there. So that's, like I said, I just try to connect with them on a different level to actually show that it's not two separate things.
Yeah, I really like that. And then you also focus more on women. Is that true as well? Or is that just because you're a
Yes,
woman?
that's just because I'm a woman. Yes.
Okay.
And like I had men ask that before. I was like, the same things work for men too. Women seek me out because I'm a female physician. That's just what came to mind. So I've worked more with women. I do have men as patients and clients, but the women just kind of flock to me. So I was like, I will focus on you. But if you're a man and you need some help, I can help you too.
Do you have any like success stories from your practice that you want to share?
Yes. So the first one I'll share is back when I first started learning about just nutrition. So back when the first patient told me about Dr. Joel Fuhrman, Eat to Live, I was just like flipping through the book. I didn't read the whole thing, but there was a patient there, female, that was diagnosed with diabetes, and she was absolutely afraid of needles. And she was like, I do not want to be on insulin. I do not want to be on medication at all. And I was like, okay, well, I just learned some new things. This is the first time I'm trying it out. You can actually change some things in your lifestyle that actually will help with your diabetes. And so she was like, okay, whatever it takes, because I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. And I was like, okay. I talked with her through, some of the changes she can make in her diet. So I always ask people what they're eating, how much they're exercising, and then try a few tweaks in the office visit for them to do. And then 3 months later, she came back and her A1C was down, back within normal range. She was my very first one. If I think back, this was before I was trained in lifestyle medicine or anything, but it was just like, okay, let me see if I try this out, see if this works. But she was one that I say she had that deep conviction, kind of like I did when I stepped on the scale. Like, I see that this is here. I don't want to tip the other way. So what can I do to like run in the other direction? And she did that and was able to reverse her diabetes because she was like, she didn't go back. So that was just in 3 months' time. So I tell people, if you make a dramatic change enough, it can happen quickly. If you do things in moderation, because I have another patient that was like that, and she was just kind of slowly changing things. And then we went through her diet and everything then here again. And I was like, okay, so here's the reasons why you're only seeing the very small drops. We're moving in the right direction, but we're moving in slowly because you're still doing X, Y, and Z. And I tell people that's okay if that's the way you want to move, but don't be upset when you don't see the dramatic changes because you didn't make a dramatic change. And we have to realize, especially as adults, that we've been doing these things to our bodies for decades. And if we don't change something dramatically to decrease that inflammation, it's going to be harder for our body to let that go. Another story I have is a lady that had high blood pressure. And her story more was not all the nutrition, but it was some of the stress and sleep. So those are the other lifestyle medicine pillars that we're looking at. And this was more of a coaching client. So I had more time to spend with her. Every week we would go through her eating, her exercise, her sleep, her stress, social connections. She wasn't a smoker, so we didn't have to worry about that. And so we noticed that her sleep and her stress were kind of off. And so while we're telling her to work on those things to actually change stress, so recognize the stress, because then she would stress eat. So she was actually cutting those late night snacks out, not just sitting on the couch in the evening, but actually get up, move around, and then make sure she's actually in the bed sleeping for her full 8 hours because she was doing less, and then get up and be ready to go. And her blood pressure went from the 140s over 90s to the 120s over 70s just by changing those lifestyle things. It wasn't actual more medication or anything like that. So she was very happy with that because she was like, I don't know why my blood pressure continues to stay high. I'm trying to eat healthy and all this kind of stuff. So I was happy to see that. And then not only did she see the numbers go down, is that she actually felt more energized. So she felt lighter. She's usually a walker, and she was able to like jog around a little bit with her daughter after making those changes. So it was just very encouraging to see, because you've seen it for yourself, but when you actually can see it in others and then how they brighten up, it just makes your heart full. And like, okay, you got to keep going. You got to keep going. There's more people to actually impact in this world. So yes.
I love that. Those are two great stories. And that's basically why we do what we do, right? You get to see everybody else improving and getting better as well. I love it.
Right.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your program or your practice?
Yeah. So in my program, actually, I don't know when this actually will air, but I actually have a 6 week program that's starting on Sunday. And again, we talk about all the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine and then actually pulling that spiritual component to where you'll be meditating on different scriptures to help you make these changes. And this is where you will see the changes in your weight, decrease your blood pressure, help your blood sugars become better, become more energized, and sleep better. And we walk through very specific nutrition things for you. So it's 6 weeks starting October 29th.
Very good. I actually posted about it because I know it's starting Sunday. Even this won't be released till Wednesday. So I
That's all
shared
right.
your thing earlier today. So hopefully
Oh, thank
everybody will
you.
see that before this airs. But yeah, I really like your unique program and how you kind of bring in the spirituality of it. I think that's really nice and
Yeah,
definitely would help with the stress reduction with everything you have
that's true.
included.
Yes.
Is
So
there, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, so if for some reason you missed the start of the 6 week program, I do offer a few private coaching spots, and you can actually go on my website and book a wellness call. So that's a 20-minute call that we'll just kind of talk and see if we would be a good fit to work together.
Awesome. And I basically was going to ask, how can people find you? So what is the website and everything?
It is www.dramandamd.com. So DrAmandaMD.com.
Nice. Okay. And we'll put all your contact information in the show notes and everything. But is there
Wonderful.
any last advice or anything for the listeners?
Take every day one step at a time. Remember, it's a journey, not a destination. And make sure you eat fruits and vegetables at every meal.
I love it. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was a lot of fun. And for all our listeners out there, you know where to find us at Clearwater Family Medicine and Allergy. And have a good week. Bye.
Bye bye.